enhance community dialogue, new ways to talk with the community and for them to talk to City Hall. So our Palo Alto is really just an expression of the totality of all of those different ideas. And we have something that's really just a visual depiction of our vision of our Palo Alto, which includes ideas, which are essentially conversations, events, and dialogues that we hope to have, as I mentioned, beyond City Hall. Actions, which are near-term things that you probably will see and hear about coming to Council this year that we hope to make progress on. And design, which is the comprehensive plan that Hillary's team is leading. So it all starts with ideas. Generated from a series of conversations, public dialogues, events. These will take many different forms, and you'll hear about them as we go along. So we want to involve and connect with neighborhoods in new ways. We want to enhance our use of technology to reach constituents and groups who don't typically come to City Hall or come to an ARB meeting or a City Council meeting or really any kind of meeting here, but do have important voices that we need to hear from. So we've done things like relaunched our online civic engagement tool, Open City Hall. We did that with a question on core values related to the council work. And that was a very, I think, robust engagement that we got a lot of really thoughtful responses from the community. We are also enhancing our social media presence. We'll have online web portals and a number of other technologies that can connect us in different ways. So ultimately, all this is in the hope to build citizenship and participation, that we can create a dynamic culture that is really a true representation of the public, a more collaborative interaction with our various publics who really represent a broad spectrum of the public's voice, and for the community to be really a true collaborative partner with local government. So this is a long process and a very ambitious one, and one that we hope will continue beyond plans and projects. And so what we wanted to do was spark dialogue by bringing together people in different ways. So we have a couple of things already planned. For example, on April 23rd, and we will invite all of you to attend, we are hosting our Palo Alto event called Who Are We? It's going to be at the downtown library, and it's really a look at the demographic changes and shifts that we can expect in Palo Alto in the next 10 to 20 years. You know, what is our population going to look like? What does that mean? How is that going to impact the decisions that the leaders of the city should make? So we'll have a group panelist of noted experts in that area, and hopefully a really interactive discussion with the community. On April 28th, we have two sessions on affordable housing, one in the afternoon, one in the evening, to talk about really the challenges of affordable housing in Palo Alto and what that means for future generations, and how that's going to fit into our housing element that Hillary's planning team is working on. We are going to be looking at our parks master plan. So an idea that we have is maybe having a picnic in the park invite families to talk about, what this master plan is going to look like and get their community input in a different and maybe more casual way than might be normally expected in a community engagement effort. We've also been talking to all of our commissions about how to get involved in partnering on events. I've spoken with the Public Arts Commission, the Planning and Transportation Commission, the Human Relations Commission, and we would really love to pose an idea for an event, say for an architectural tour of Palo Alto, where we invite the community to take a walking tour into looking at places and design and things like that. Just out-of-the-box ideas where we get out of City Hall and engaging the community in different ways. So I would love to extend this conversation with you about partnering on such an event and putting that as part of our Palo Alto. We also want to do things like partner with the Center for Deliberative Democracy at Stanford, the Institute of the Future, and other organizations who are involved in community dialogue, civic participation, and community engagement efforts. We're also building a website. It'll be ourpaloalto.org. That'll be sort of a one-stop portal for everything our Palo Alto. We really want to create a lot of opportunities for feedback, two-way dialogue, whether it's online or in person, so that we really have an interaction and strong engagement with a variety of communities. So that's the ideas part of our Palo Alto. But we don't want to just be all talk. We want some action. So as we continue our ideas dialogue, we are moving forward with a number of near-term actions that we can either make good progress on or complete this year. Many of these fall into Hillary's shop, but you may have seen a number of them already that the council has been tackling, and things that we know impact the quality of life here and that we do hear from the community that they want some action taken. So some of those include parking and transportation issues, the transportation demand management efforts, the California Streetscape project, which broke ground a couple of weeks ago, and that with any luck will be completed and beautiful by the end of 2014. Planned community zoning reform, updated housing element, carbon lease. There's a whole host of things that are somewhat daunting if you look at the council's work plan, but we are moving forward on those kinds of actions. So finally, the last piece of our Palo Alto is more the futuristic piece, the design piece that is based on the work that the Planning and Transportation Commission has done on the comprehensive plan. So we believe it's time to engage with the community in more in-depth discussions on the future of our city, which is really embedded in the comprehensive plan. So Hillary's team has been working on moving that plan forward. They have a whole outreach effort that will be undertaken in the next 24 months. So the idea behind our Palo Alto is the ideas and conversations that are sparked with the community in new and different ways will hopefully inform some of those decisions on the actions and ultimately the design and the comprehensive plan. So when I talked about how the tracks parallel but intersect, that's hopefully a conceptual way of looking at that. So as we all know, done right, the comprehensive plan is the blueprint for Palo Alto's future. And so what we hope to do is have these three parallel and intersecting track really be a new way of engaging with the community, broadening our outreach, getting feedback from communities who haven't typically engaged with City Hall, doing it in new and different ways, and ultimately sort of changing the culture of civic participation engagement in Palo Alto. So that's a very broad overview of our Palo Alto, and with that, I think Hillary and I would be happy to answer any questions. I think you will hopefully all have our Palo Alto lapel pins too, so a little swag for this morning. Thank you.
Okay, this is the time when members of the public can speak to this item. We're trying to engage the community, so if there are any members of the public that have comments, you actually get first dibs. So, no, nobody? Okay. Well, we're very lucky. We happen to have several members of the board that actually grew up in Palo Alto, and they actually have parents that live in Palo Alto, and we even have the chief planning official that grew up in Palo Alto. So I think that's really great. So to begin with, I'm gonna do something I don't normally do. I'm going to begin with board member Pop.
Thank you for coming to present this to us today. It's exciting to see it happening, and we all know that this is such an important thing for us to be undertaking. I very much appreciate the idea about the architectural tour, and I'm wondering what other ways do you envision our board being involved in this process, and actually not as residents but as board members interacting and helping to move this forward in an efficient and productive manner.
Thank you, Commissioner. We are still in the, as you can tell, sort of the planning process of the ideas part of it, which is, I think, the more conceptual. And so in our discussions with commissions who want to be involved and take a role other than just planning an event with us, we would certainly appreciate you letting us know networks, community groups, any different ways in your role as a commissioner and in the community that we can broaden our outreach. We certainly would welcome your participation and attendance at all of these different kinds of outreach and events. And any ideas that you have that you think in your work that you hear the community is very interested in about a conversation, a neighborhood gathering. So I think we're open to any and all input and ideas. So I don't want you to feel that you'd be limited to just, say, an architectural tour and that would be it. We really hope that this is a long-term engagement. Many of you've lived in this community a long time and have really good insights about the best ways to broaden that engagement and the ways that as a city we can be more collaborative with the community. So I think just keeping those conversations and dialogue going would be really invaluable to us.
All right, that's terrific. I'll just come forward and say I'm prepared to spend my time helping with this and what needs to be done.
That's wonderful.
Should be done, and we should all in the community, everybody,
right,
all ages, not just the people who regularly come to the hearings, but
right,
the people who haven't engaged. I'm really hoping that we'll hear their voices as well.
Right.
If I happen to miss some of these events, you were talking about this event on April 23rd, and I already know I've got an event going on that day. I can't get to that. But you're talking about the demographics of the city, and you're going to be describing, what we're made out of. And I really want to understand that. Mm-hmm. Will that information be posted somewhere? Will the PowerPoint or whatever documents that are part of that be available?
Thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner. Yes, we are going to be videotaping all of the events. Okay. So what we hope to do is, if you can't come to an event, which we know people cannot always do that, we'll have the PowerPoint, presentations, videos, all the information that was presented so that people can still engage at their own convenient time and get the information. So that's part of the website that we're developing. So we'll have a lot of content and ways for people to get information about what was discussed, definitely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Board Member Malone Pritchard.
Thanks for bringing this to us. I was curious when I saw it on the agenda, so this is
well, good.
Very interesting. A couple of questions. Outreach, so how are you getting the information out to the community that these events are happening?
It's multi-pronged. We will be pushing it out on social media, our website. We're also taking ads out in the weekly, so both the print edition and the electronic online will have an ad every day for a week preceding the event. We're hoping to send out to our neighborhood groups, any posted on Nextdoor, any and all ways of getting folks to know about the events. And eventually what we hope to do is have the website up and running in about a month, so we'll be able to drive folks to the website, which will have all the events, the upcoming events. We'll have an e-news letter where you can subscribe to all the information about our Palo Alto. So really there'll be multiple ways of finding out about what's happening.
Great. I would also encourage you to reach out to schools and libraries.
Absolutely.
And then at our recent retreat, we had talked a little bit about trying to reach out to the public and let them know what the boards and commissions do. What are our different roles, that sort of thing. So I would encourage you to fold something like that into your outreach.
I think that's a really good suggestion. In fact, Mayor Shepherd and I have been talking a little bit about that. I think the community doesn't perhaps understand the role of the commission, the various commissions, what their mission is, what their objectives are, and I think this is a really wonderful opportunity. Maybe we use that as one of the ideas for our Palo Alto, how to get involved, what the commissions do, how important they are to the work of the city. So I think that's a wonderful suggestion.
That's all, thank you.
Board Member Liu.
So thank you. I just want to mention that maybe like 25 years ago, I went to an event that was run by the city. It was like a charrette with like a design charrette for downtown. And that was like my very first civic engagement thing. And then many, many years later here, I'm here sort of following up on that. And that the engagement may not happen immediately, but it'll eventually happen. But I think that if you don't take the first step now, it could never, might not happen. So I think this is a great idea. I think as I talk to people in Palo Alto, I think the biggest question that I get, my most frequent question that I get is, why are there so many big buildings on El Camino? And I think that like the Grand Boulevard idea and some of the things that are happening here and PC zones are just not, they're not fully communicated to the public. And I think that to me, that's like a big, the biggest issue, aside from our usual parking and all of that kind of stuff. But I mean, that the vision of the Grand Boulevard is not fully connected into the public. And so it's just maybe trying to look at that. I know some other cities like Menlo Park and Mountain View have had community gatherings run by, with the Grand Boulevard people presenting their work. And so maybe that might be appropriate for this or a future meeting. But thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Board Member Guyer.
Well, I don't really have anything any questions at this point, but I think it's a great idea. Quite often, as you said, when people find out that you're associated with the city in some form, immediately they have all kinds of questions. And most of it is just a matter if they don't know how to get information, right, or they figure there's this entity out there somewhere that they really can't get a hold of. And so anything like this on the early stages, I think is a great idea.
Great. Thank you.
Well, I just want to start off by saying that whether people realize it or not, there's an elephant in the room. And we sort of tiptoe around the elephant. We don't really acknowledge the elephant. And growth is really the elephant in the room. And most people are either they're reacting to it or they ignore it. And so the idea is that to have this discussion and have it in a meaningful way can really be helpful in terms of bringing people together, understanding what we have to deal with here, and then begin to actually address it. I think it's important that we do outreach and we do it in a way that engages almost everybody. It has to be in your face. So the first line that I think that's important is the service clubs and organizations within the community. We have 2 Rotary clubs. There's the Kiwanis Club. There's the Palo Alto Women's Club. They all do meaningful work in the community, and they're all impacted by this growth message. So I think it's important to bring the message to them and to engage them first. Even the Chamber of Commerce, they're an important player in this. So that's one aspect that I think that's particularly important. I would also consider looking at hiring a professional facilitator, a third party who is not connected with Palo Alto, to be the person who facilitates, but somebody who is identified with this process as it moves forward, so that there's always one person to go through. The presentation is done through them, even though they may not be doing the presentation themselves. But it's sort of like that one point of contact that a citizen can call, send an email, and can sort of be a clearinghouse for this. I think that that's particularly important. And then the last point I want to make is that if you truly want to engage board members, particularly the ARB, the HRB, Planning and Transportation Commission, Parks and Recs, we have a duty that we be objective in our methodology. We can't be in here micromanaging. We can't be in here giving opinions in a way that compromise our impartiality. We may have things to contribute, but we have to be very careful about how those are delivered. And so this is particularly, I think, for Director Gittleman. It's particularly important that we get some guidelines or some guidance from the City Attorney's Office as to the appropriateness and the involvement of the boards and commissions, particularly, whether when we attend these meetings, do we just simply sit and absorb the information? Because this stuff is going to come back to us eventually and ask us to maybe render some opinions or give some direction to the City Council and to you as well. So I want there to be some clear boundaries and guidelines as to what our participation. And frankly, I think that Vice Chair Pop getting involved, I also want to get involved. If we can do anything in terms of making a presentation and talking about the Architectural Review Board and what our purview is, I think that would be particularly important and helpful for the citizens. So that's sort of my three main points here.
Oh.
Any other comments here?
If you'd like, I could just respond briefly. Thank you, Chair Lippert. You raised several good thoughts there. First, on the issues around growth. I mean, we do intend to tackle those elephants in the room during the comprehensive plan process, and very shortly, I hope, we'll be adding to the list of events that Claudia articulated with a suite of events and conversations that are part of the outreach effort associated with the comprehensive plan. One of those very first conversations has to be about critical issues, growth management strategies, things that I think there's a lot of interest in discussing. So we hope that conversation is going to be engaged within the next 60 to 90 days. The other issues, of course, I'm happy to provide some support to you in terms of guidance on how the board can participate in public forums. We do anticipate that a lot of these initial meetings will be about ideas, not about specific projects. So the board members and commission members hopefully will not be constrained from participating fully. I appreciate your offer and Mr. Pop's offer to participate in helping us plan an event. We have quickly realized that this is a big idea. Ideas, action, and design is a big idea, and we're just not going to be able to do it all ourselves with the limited staff we have. And so we're hoping to find volunteers that are currently volunteering their time on boards and commissions who will help us plan events around not the role of the board necessarily, but on a issue about design, maybe what makes good design, how density can be planned to be more successful, what are good examples, bad examples, and pull from projects that have been built in the region, not all in Palo Alto, but maybe design a tour and invite people to anyway, we have some ideas about how we might structure it, but we need the manpower and the brain power to turn it into reality. And so appreciate your offer of assistance. I'm happy to talk more about that in the future.
Thank you very much. So with that, we will move on to the second item. And the second item is 2500 El Camino Real, request by Stanford Real Estate for architectural review of a proposed 4-story mixed-use project with 70 residential units, 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units of below-market rate rental housing, and approximately 7,000 square feet of commercial space. The zone is CS, Environmental Assessment, in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act. And an environmental impact report was prepared and certified for this project on May 5th, 2005. And so I just want to clarify with staff, we're not talking about the development agreement today, and we're not talking about the EIR. We're talking about the project. Is that correct?
Thank you. Yes, that is correct. Claire will go into a little bit more detail of what the purview is, but it's a very limited purview in compared to what the ARB usually does because of the development agreement.
Thank you very much. So with that, Ms. Campbell, if you'd like to introduce the project.
Good morning. This morning you'll be reviewing the second housing project associated with the 2005 Mayfield Development Agreement. Under this agreement, Stanford, at their expense, agreed to construct a soccer facility at the 6-acre Mayfield site and lease this facility to the city for $1 per year for a term of 51 years. In return, the city granted Stanford vested rights to build 250 housing units at 2 separate locations. At the last ARB meeting, the board reviewed a 180-unit housing project on the Upper California Avenue site, and today you will be reviewing the 70-unit below-market-rate housing project along El Camino Real. The project before you today also includes a 7,000-square-foot ground-floor commercial space along the street frontage. The proposed project is being developed using the AS1 development standards. These standards outline the physical constraints for the project, and the development agreement addresses the limitations of the review process. As agreed upon in the development agreement, the ARB's purview is limited to the following elements. First, to determine whether the project complies with the AS1 development standards and the architectural review findings. And second, the ARB shall focus their review on the project's lighting, noise levels, landscaping, and selection of exterior materials and finishes for the buildings. Included in the project and provided for in the AS1 development standards was a request for a 20% reduction in the parking requirements. After reviewing the parking study and project elements, the planning director concluded that the requested parking reduction can be supported for this project. Staff has reviewed the project and finds that it is in compliance with the AS1 development standards with the proposed conditions of approval. The draft conditions of approval have been included as attachment C of your report, and since that preparation of the document, additional clarifications and edits will need to be made to the final conditions for this project. These minor edits do not impact the proposed design of the project and are not substantive in nature. And I'd like to mention that I did leave out one condition of approval that I had specifically referred to in the body of the staff report, and it was regarding the parking lift management plan. So the applicant is required to submit this plan for review and approval prior to the occupancy of the building, and this requirement will be added to the final conditions of approval. And lastly, I'd like to inform you about the public comments that we've received. Staff has received 6 comment letters, and which I think the board has been copied on all of those. One letter was from the Santa Clara County Housing Action Coalition, and they provide general support for the project, and the remaining letters express some concerns about the project. 3 comment letters focus solely on the anticipated parking impacts to the neighborhood due to the project and encourage the city to require 100% parking and no reduction in the parking spaces. The remaining 2 letters were from the College Terrace Resident Association, and their primary concerns were about the lack of the pedestrian and bike access at the rear of the project site and the noise produced from the newly installed mechanical equipment. And staff has been made aware of these public comments received, and they can respond to these as requested. And this concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is prepared to provide you with a detailed presentation this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this point, we will have a presentation by the applicant, followed by members of the public. So with that, Lydia Tan, I guess, will open the... And you will have, Ms. Tan, you will have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Lippert and members of the Commission. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Lydia Tan. I'm Executive Vice President of the Related Companies of California, and we had been selected by Stanford to be the developer and owner-operator of this wonderful project. So we had presented back in June of last year at a preliminary ARB hearing and received some very, very thoughtful comments from both the public and from the ARB. And we're here today to essentially talk about those our responses to those comments, and hopefully you will agree that we've been very careful and thoughtful as we actually think this is a much better project as a result of those comments. Something else has changed since the last time we met is that we're really pleased to announce that our major commercial tenant, our non-residential tenant, is the Vista Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. It's a long-standing Palo Alto nonprofit. They actually are on-site in the existing building as it is, and we're really pleased to have them be part of the project going forward. I also want to thank the College Terrace Residents Association for meeting with us a few times between June and now to continue to have a dialogue with us and give us input as the project went forward. And I'm going to stop now. Really, we want to focus on the project and the changes. We've got team members from the architect, the landscape architect, and our project team as well. We're all here to answer questions as you need. So I'm going to introduce Kevin Wilcock. He'll walk you through the architectural changes. Thank you.
Morning. Kevin Wilcock with David Baker Architects. Let's see if this works here. Just wanted to give you, the basic project hasn't changed since we last presented it the middle of last year. We still have a 70-unit project. Let's see if this pointer works. There. Yeah. Basically, the building massing is still organized with the 4-story portion of the building on the northwest portion of the property here, and a 3-story portion mass along the southwest portion here. And there's a break between the masses, which signify the entry into the project and give porosity and view into a 80 by 80 central courtyard that these masses define. In the rear of the property, we have 48-car surface parking lot here, and then underneath the 4-story mass, we have 97-car open-air garage with the parking lifts. And then we still maintain the retail on the corner here and the larger Vista space underneath the 4-story portion along El Camino. So we just wanted to kind of recap some of your comments from the meeting in the summer of last year that we heard. One of the comments regarding what we call our swoosh building here, the 4-story portion, was folks liked the clean, modern treatment, but there were some concerns with the flatness of the windows, as you can see, and they wanted a little bit more detail added to this facade. We're still maintaining the variegated masonry cladding on the building. So what we've done is we've introduced recessed windows on this portion of the building, aluminum windows. We've introduced a coping along the top of the building that accent the swoosh curve of the form, and we've also introduced aluminum reveals breaking down the articulation of that variegated masonry unit facade. The ground floor still maintains the warm Ipe siding and glazing into the Vista space. Along the back, this is a back view of the property or the project. And a couple comments we received here was maybe look at reducing the number of materials on this facade and this portion of the building, and maybe looking at the color palette and possibly simplifying that. So what we've done is we've changed the siding that you saw in the previous image, and we've introduced cement plaster. We've removed the parapet wall up here, starting to break down the mass and recess the balconies form, so it starts to help articulate the massing of the building and break that down. We've introduced wood siding along the base of the building, which used to have concrete to kind of warm it up. And then we've added more porosity to our balconies. As you can see previously, they were solid. So now there's more transparency and lightness on those elements. I move around to the parking lot side view here of the courtyard and the arcade where the common spaces open out onto that large 80 by 80 space. Again, similar comments about the simplifying of the materials. There was a comment about the darkness of the green color, and maybe taking a look at that and maybe changing that color palette. So what we've done again is simplified it with the light colored cement plaster siding. removing some of the parapets to break down the massing of the building, articulate that parapet line, and break down the form. We've introduced again the warms Ipe siding, changed that from the colder concrete color, and then we've enhanced the south-facing sunshades and made those larger and more articulated to provide shading for these south-facing windows. And so some of the other changes are related to landscape, so I'd like to bring up Gary Strang, our landscape architect, to kind of go over those changes and how he addressed your comments relating that scope of work on the project. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Gary Strang from GLS Landscape Architecture, and I'd like to address your comments in primarily three areas. First, El Camino Real, then there's the planting design, and also the lighting. So I'd also like to acknowledge the city arborist, Dave Doctor, and thank him for meeting with us twice on site, and also for reviewing our drawings in detail and working with us on the refinements of the planting plan and responding to your comments about providing more detail and diversity of plant materials. So on El Camino Real, I just want to say that the sidewalk is currently 7.5 feet wide. That's being widened to 13 feet as a minimum, and that extra 6 feet or so is over the property line. And then in addition to that 13 feet, the building sets back an additional 3 to, I don't know, it varies between 16 and 20 feet, so that in much of the frontage, it complies to the Grand Boulevard initiative, the idea being to provide a better pedestrian environment and to encourage, bicycles and pedestrians and to encourage transit use. So one of the comments that we got from Dave Doctor, and when we looked at the street in more detail, is that, we're preserving the existing street trees there, which is a mix of ginkgo and sycamore trees. And I'll have a little more detail on that in a moment. Let me go forward here. And on the El Camino Real frontage, we were asked to provide more detail in the ground level plantings. So we have, we're showing what those materials actually are. There's a mix of three things. There's a very a carpet-like ground cover. There's some intermediate-sized grassy materials, the liriope that grows in shade, and then these taller native ferns, the woodwardias. And then there's a 60-inch box redwood tree, which is planted in front of this glassy bridge, which will provide an accent at the entry, and it also gives our residents a little bit of privacy towards El Camino Real. On the south side, on the garage elevation, the garage entry, there are 2 redwood trees which are added on each side that bracket the garage. There's ginkgo trees up against the building, and elms in front, and vines also, and shrubs planted at the base of the building. And that's something that we worked with Dave on quite a bit to kind of tie those evergreens into, to have a backbone of evergreen plantings throughout the site. In terms of the lighting, on El Camino Real, we're adding 2 pedestrian lights, lower lights, which will make a better environment for walkers at night. And then in the parking lot, we've done a photometric study which resulted in the addition of 6 additional pole lights so that we have good uniform lighting for safety. Then just to provide a little bit more detail on El Camino Real, this shows the building setback.
If you could just wrap things up.
Okay, yeah. It shows how the building sets back from, this is our 13-foot minimum sidewalk, and then an additional minimum of 3-foot setback, which varies to 20 feet. So if there's any questions further about that, I'd be happy to address.
Thank you very much. This is the time when members of the public may speak to this item, but I'm going to ask first Mr. Worthman, is that correct? Do you have anything to add from Stamford? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, I'll open the public hearing. We'll start with Pam Brandon, followed by Alice McGrath. And you'll each have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Pam Brandon, and I'm the Executive Director of Vista Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Vista Center was established in Palo Alto in 1936 as the Palo Alto Society for the Blind, and we've provided continuous service here for nearly 80 years. We're a nonprofit organization offering vision loss rehabilitation services to individuals living in San Mateo, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, and San Benito counties. These services include information and referral, counseling and support groups, low vision evaluations, training in adapted mobility and living skills, assistive technology, and youth services. We help change the lives of 2,600 or more clients and their families each year. More than 60% of our clients are low or very low income. We've been located since 1995 at 2470 El Camino Real, where public transportation, including Caltrain, VTA, and paratransit options, are truly a blessing for our visually impaired clients, staff, and volunteers. As you know, it is very difficult for nonprofits like ours to find affordable space in Palo Alto, and I've been looking for permanent space for at least a decade, and I can vouch for the fact that it's very difficult. Having the added requirement that we be accessible by public transportation has made this a daunting task. Now we have an extraordinary opportunity given to us by Stanford and Related California to remain in our location as the ground level tenant of the proposed below market rate project. But we will benefit from a long-term lease at much below market rate rent. So we're staying not only in our location, but having a long-term lease and below market rate rent. And that will take us past 100 years of service here in Palo Alto. Vista Center has been able to remain in Palo Alto for almost 80 years, thanks in large part to generous landlords, the first of whom was Lucy Stern, who purchased a home at 533 Forest Avenue for our use. Our very generous landlord for the last 3 years has been Stanford University, who will also be housing us for the 2+ years it will take to complete the project at 2500 El Camino, in which they found a place for Vista Center and have made it affordable for us. We look forward to eventually returning to our very special, accessible location, to a brand new building where some of our clients may even be able to live. Thank you for your positive consideration of this project.
Thank you, Ms. Brandon. I just want to say that your organization is an asset to this community, and I'm really glad that you can stay. I have a number of friends that have used the facility, and we see your, students training throughout the city. So thank you for staying. Alice McGrath, followed by Travis Gigi. And Ms. McGrath, you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm just trying to find the mic. It's standing. Oh, got it. Thank you. Hello, my name is Alice McGrath,
And your dog?
And my dog is Cora. Thank you very much. She appreciates the introduction. I am the Community Relations Manager for Vista Center, and I have worked for this agency since 2006. Prior to working for Vista Center, I actually came to this agency in 1997 as a client when I first experienced significant vision loss. And one of the things that Pam Brandon mentioned is that a significant service that we offer to our clients is to be able to help them to reclaim quality of life and independence. And to do that, the first step for doing that is to teach orientation and mobility. So a critical aspect of being able to live an independent life is to be able to get not only to the services that you need, but hopefully to employment by using public transportation. I clearly remember the first time I was able to travel independently using a cane when I first lost my vision by coming by Caltrain and walking up California Avenue to come to Vista Center. That was my first step for going back to my job at that point. And I was so impacted by the work that I received and the services I received that I decided to come and join the staff at Vista Center. We have 9 visually impaired individuals who work or volunteer at our agency, and we travel there daily by public transportation, Caltrain, VTA, Samtrams, and we do that with not only confidence, but also the competence that Vista Center has offered to us. Having the opportunity to live and thrive is aided by public transportation, and we are uniquely positioned to be able to be available to not only staff members, but the 2,500 clients that we serve. I am thrilled about the fact that we have the opportunity to come back to our location, not only to be able to continue to work with our clients, existing and potential, but also to be able to come back to a community that is thriving. So I thank you for your consideration and the opportunity to speak with you here today.
Okay, and let the record show that Cora's tail was wagging and she was very enthusiastic that she didn't need to learn a new place to go. Okay, we have Travis Gigi, followed by Brent Barker.
Chair Lippert, thank you for the opportunity. It's actually pronounced Travis Gigi.
My apologies.
No worries. I get a lot of different pronunciations. So I'm on the College Terrace Residents Association board, but today I'm here just as a parent of 2 boys that go to Escondido School, the same that these beautiful children up on the slide will. And I primarily want to talk about pedestrian and bicycle access at the rear of the building. And I have a couple of reasons for being concerned about this. So as a parent of 2 boys that go to Escondido, we walk to school every day. And I walk to Fambrini's restaurant, beautiful place right next door to where this development is going to be, as well as California Ave, and I often take my boys there as well. Now, as a parent, my most alert and concerned time is when I'm going across the major crosswalks at El Camino and I have my children with me. And I can only imagine that the parents of these children will feel similarly. If I have the opportunity to choose between my kids walking or biking down a busy street and busy crosswalks versus going a more direct route across neighborhood crosswalks with less traffic, less noise, I'm going to choose the back route every time. And I can only imagine that these parents will do the same. So while the developers are widening the sidewalk, and that's wonderful, I don't personally believe that, as a parent, I would prefer to take that route versus the back route. Now, when I walk through this parking lot as it stands today, there's no pedestrian access there. There's no sidewalks. The only protection that I have is to walk along the back fence and hope that the cars are more scared of the fence than they are of the pedestrians that are in the way. So I would humbly request for Stanford or the architects to take a second look at building some safe walkways behind the project so that the tenants of this building and the children can have a safe way to walk to school. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Brent Barker, followed by Doria Suma.
Chair Lippert, board members, Brent Barker, president of the CTRA, and a 35-year resident on Amherst Street. We sent comments, and Stanford rushed in essentially a rebuttal to our comments late yesterday. If you read those 2 documents, you might get the impression that we're really in contention, and I don't think we really are. Most things can be resolved. We basically like this project, and a number of things that we asked for, they have basically agreed. I don't think the noise is going to become an issue, ultimately. The construction hours, we asked to be cut back from 8 p.m. to 6 p.m. They agreed. This Vista Center lease, we think it's just wonderful. They're going to be there. And this does a tremendous thing in terms of reducing the parking requirements. So the 20% reduction that they're asking for seems quite credible at this point. Also, they have voluntarily offered VTA Echo passes to the residents, which will help them take public transportation and reduce the costs. Now, the one area we are in contention is essentially what Travis was talking about. It's this 24-foot easement at the back, which, given a very tight parcel, doesn't really allow for a pedestrian bike pathway, but we think that it could be somehow folded in, and we don't know how. It only needs 6 feet wide green pathway going forward. Now, they've said that the safe route is El Camino, and I think the city has gone along with this. And I think as a parent, if you took a look, when you see the architectural drawings, there are no cars on El Camino, and we know it's just flooded with cars. It's not a particularly safe way. Out the back would be much easier, much safer, and I think actually parents will actually do that. They'll take that, even though there'll be designations. In part because the safe route to school calls for stepping across California Avenue and continuing down El Camino. And I think if you looked at it, you would take a left. You go straight up California Avenue. It's a very nice sidewalk. You get up to where it's much less congested, and you cross. Now, I think this is where this pathway is where the city has fallen down. Let me read you something from May 2nd, 2005, memo from the city manager to the city council. It says the development agreement requires on-site implementation of comprehensive plan policies L43 and L44 to provide sidewalks, pedestrian paths, and bicycle connections linking California Avenue to the playfields, as the soccer fields, as are redeveloped. The city will need to work with both Wells Fargo and Bank of America, this is before the applicant came in, to develop their respective parking lots with a, okay.
If you could just sort of wrap things up.
I will go right down to the last line. The city retains its right to use eminent domain to provide a pathway connection. That was the intent of the city at that time, and I think the city has fallen down. It's just basically backed off from that. And
thank you very much, Mr. Parker. Doria Suma, followed by Phyllis Castle.
Good morning, Chair and board members. I want to thank Stanford for this project. The below market rate housing is really needed, and the retention of the Vista group in the neighborhood is very much appreciated. But I am concerned about the reduction in parking at this location. It's basically a parking island Monday through Friday with permit parking and timed parking all around it. So I would just ask that if that doesn't work out, that Stanford monitor it and respond with a solution, and I don't think that would be very hard to do. My only other comment is I live very close to the intersection of Yale and California Avenue, and it's already kind of a funny intersection. And the proximity of Yale Street and the extension of Yale Street, which is Wilson Sonsini's driveway, and the easement is really a funny configuration because they're so close together. So I think some attention needs to be given to that intersection and how the traffic coming out of that intersection will proceed without clogging up the traffic in the other direction. We have a very similar situation with Starbucks on Stanford Avenue, so if you could just look at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Phyllis Castle, followed by Jessica DeWitt.
Good morning. I'm Phyllis Castle, and I'm speaking for the League of Women Voters of Palo Alto. The League of Women Voters urges you to approve the 2500 El Camino development. It needs a new name, some name. This affordable mixed-use project with 70 small 1, 2, and 3 bedroom BMR units is much needed in Palo Alto. The location has easy access to public transportation and is close to a variety of retail services. Funding affordable housing is particularly difficult. We are fortunate to have this development moving towards construction. The League believes that affordable housing is a much-needed asset in our community and is particularly pleased that this housing is centrally located where public transit and walking can reduce single-use vehicle use. Please support the affordable housing development at 2500 El Camino. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Castle. Jessica, you didn't put the item number on this. Were you going to speak to this item? Okay, great. So Jessica DeWitt, followed by Shiloh Ballard.
Good morning. I'm Jessica DeWitt with Palo Alto Housing. We're here today to support the project as proposed in the staff report. As a nonprofit providing affordable housing here in Palo Alto, we can speak to the critical need for it in this community. With close access to buses and the train on California, this is an ideal location for low-income housing and low-income residents that tend to use more public transit and own fewer cars. The average parking ratio for our family properties here in Palo Alto is 1.32, and parking on the properties is not a problem. So we too support the request for a 20% reduction that has been supported by staff. We urge you to support this project today so more affordable housing options can become available to people who desperately need it in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. DeWitt. Shiloh Ballard. And again, I'm just going to ask if there are any other members of the public that wish to speak to this item. Okay, you can, Mr. Worthman, you can fill out a card afterwards.
Good morning. My name is Shiloh Ballard. I work for the Silicon Valley Leadership Group and staff the organization's housing and land use work. I'm here representing the Housing Action Coalition, which submitted a letter of support. Without being repetitive, we want to underscore what was mentioned by our colleague, Jessica DeWitt. I also want to emphasize a few points that she made, and that is that we too support locating dense housing near transit and job centers so that folks don't have to rely so much on the car. And then there is an argument to be made that you absolutely don't need as much parking for a typical development. So we fully support that. I also want to say two last points. One is, as someone who goes to a lot of city council meetings and planning commission hearings, I really appreciate the thoughtful and constructive tone of the folks who come up here and express their opinions to you. It's great to see. And then the last point that I wanted to make was that developers of affordable housing have lots of timelines and funding constraints and deadlines that they're under. And so it would be really great if y'all could make a decision today so that we can get this project in the queue, get it funded, and get it built. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Christopher Worthman, you'll, I guess, close it up unless we have some other speakers, and if you'd fill out a speaker card when you're finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Lippert, board members. I'm Chris Wuthman and manager of this project for Stanford University Real Estate. I would like to speak to the point that President Barker brought up, and first note that we have had many very constructive meetings with College Terrace representatives and people over the years now. And they have caused us to think seriously and hopefully thoughtfully about this issue. He is correct in noting that the development agreement actually does not call for a pedestrian and bicycle pathway at the rear of the property. Instead, it invokes comprehensive plan policies which call for the development of attractive and comfortable pathways, sidewalks and pathways that are consistent with the character of their location. So we interpret this in our location to mean sidewalks and pathways that lead to safe crossing of California Avenue on the one side and to the actual entrance of the soccer fields on the other. The entrance of the soccer fields is on El Camino. The safe crossing is actually at the stoplight of California Avenue in El Camino. There is not a safe crossing of California otherwise until way down at Hanover by our faculty housing project. And so therefore we support and will implement the widening of the El Camino sidewalk. We have made an offer to Wells Fargo to work with them and execute for them a widening of the sidewalk there. We have also placed our bicycle facilities, which are far in excess of standard provision and projects, near our El Camino entrance so that it's very convenient to go to and from El Camino. We are opposed to directing and facilitating bicyclists and pedestrians towards an unsafe vehicle driveway that is patently for vehicles. We did look at our overall space opportunities and constraints, and with providing 70 units, further setback from El Camino to widen the sidewalk, and provision of 20% open space, it just makes it prohibitive to provide additional bike and pathway in the rear as well. Not to mention that we do feel that the policies and good planning call for directing the pedestrians and bikes to safe crossings and the entrances of destinations. So they've caused us to think long and hard about this and how we can provide most safely for the residents in the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers that wish to speak to this item? Okay, since there aren't, I will close the public hearing and return to the board for questions and comments. And we'll begin with Board Member Guyer, and you will have a soft 5 minutes.
Okay. First of all, in the with public disclosure, I had the representative from Stanford, the developer, and the architect met in my office for about an hour or so Monday, mainly because I'm the only person up here who wasn't involved in the first application, and it allowed me the opportunity to sort of see where or what the initial application was and how they responded to the comments that were made by the board at that time. Anyway, so interesting enough, the first aspect that I thought was rather interesting is that you've got a one-story building on one side and a six-story building on the other side, and yet, to me it seemed that the buildings would have been flipped or mirror image, that the higher one would be towards the six-story and the smaller one towards the one-story. But again, I wasn't involved as to why that was done that way. A couple of points that I guess were presented the first go-around is the strengthening of the breezeway. And I guess initially it was an open breezeway, and then the glass was put in. I still think it's a bit weak in the sense that the glass panels, I'd like to see maybe a combination of the glass panels with possibly the perforated screening in some sort of a pattern or something going on there to make it a little bit more dense, or a solid connection between the two. The 20% parking reduction is always a catch-22 in that it's sort of, if you give people, or if you make it too easy to have all the parking you want, that's just going to encourage them to get that second car and park it there and do whatever with it. If you make it tougher, and especially based on where the project is located near public transportation and Caltrain, I think if it becomes too difficult to find a parking place in your own garage, you have a tendency to say, "Well, what the heck? I'll just take the train." I was involved a couple of years ago with a project in San Mateo, same sort of thing on El Camino Real, all BMR units, and same concern came up with the reduction of parking, and actually it has worked beautifully. So I mean, there's something that was done a couple of years ago, and it's fully, or it was filled up almost immediately, and it has worked very, very well. Everyone uses public transportation. Same sort of thing. They have TDMs that provide assistance for bus passes, rail passes, that sort of thing. Let's see. The whole thing about the California, or the widening the sidewalk, I think is probably the better solution of the bicycle path as compared to the back, mainly because if this facility or this particular project controlled the link completely to California, I could see that would be a valid point. But just developing a bike path on your property and then having it stop when you hit the property at Wells Fargo, I think doesn't seem to make any sense. And I understand that the comment was made about eminent domain, but I'm just really not a fan of eminent domain. I've seen that go awry too many times, especially, I mean, I look at eminent domain as a last, case effort to do something. If there was, if it was a 5-foot sidewalk on El Camino, I'd say absolutely we need to do something. But they are making a concerted effort to accommodate everything on El Camino. And so, like I said, if there is a solution possible, I'd rather see that than eminent domain. Let's see. I think that's probably it for me at the moment.
Okay. Vice Chair Pop. Thank you very much. So I'll disclose that I met with the applicant and the architect at my office. And we received a nice presentation of the project, and they explained a number of the changes to me at that time. And I've listened very carefully to the comments that I've heard today, and I will focus on only the items that are within our purview here. My quick feeling about this bike path in the rear, and I'm really relying on the finding number 10 that I think gives me the leeway to even talk about this, is that in the same way that Board Member Gouyer-Harris mentioned, Wells Fargo Bank has no obligation to do this, first of all, and so creating a link that is broken in the middle seems very problematic to me. But even in consideration of the fact that they might do this, there are 3 major aisles in the rear of this project where cars are turning in and out of parking lots and driveways and all sorts of other things. And I think the idea of introducing pedestrians and bicycles into what is essentially just a parking lot in the back is much more dangerous than just asking people to ride their bikes or walk along a dedicated sidewalk. I've worked on projects where we've created pathways in the back, but we've done that in areas where it's an isolated corridor and there's nothing that's going to cross it, nothing that's going to interact with it. And I have to say that if my son was riding to school out of this project, I would not let him ride through the parking lot, because I think people are focused on getting to work, they're focused on getting home, and they're not looking for the bikes that are riding around and not respecting the lot and not respecting the pathways. And so I'm not in favor of the idea of a pathway in the back of this project. In regard to items such as lighting, noise, landscape, and exterior finishes, I very much appreciate the project as it's come forward today. I think from my perspective, the pendulum maybe has swung just a little too far, and we've simplified the project a little too much. There really are many nice details in this project. I love the sunshades. I think the gradient design on the swoosh building is really very interesting and fun. And I particularly like the landscape fencing details. I think they're just great. But I think that somehow the richness of the palette has diminished a bit. And we've got sort of a series of stucco boxes now, where before we had a whole series of materials that were applied. And while I was one of the proponents of having more consistency in color and simplifying a little bit, I do think that that can be achieved without removing all of these other types of materials. And I'm hopeful that there's some middle ground that the pendulum might swing back to just a little bit, bring some of that richness back. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I think that that I'm concerned about just how simple this has gotten. When we were in my office, you showed a rendering of the sidewalk. And I don't find information in my packet, and I didn't see a description of that today, but there was a different material that was being proposed for the sidewalk in a rendering that was shown. And I don't know if you want to address that quickly, or I think the concern that I had was that we should maintain city standard sidewalk colors, and patterns and things could integrate with what is occurring on the building to knit it into the building in a way. But I think our approach in the past has been to maintain city standard sidewalk design, and so if you wanted to address that, that would be great.
I am going to just jump outside of our purview here for 1 second and say that I'm concerned about the comment from the public about reducing the construction hours. That, from my perspective, reducing from 8 p.m. to 6 p.m. over the course of a 2-year project is likely to result in, just mathematically, what I calculate out to be almost a 4-month extension in the project. And before you really decide you want to do that, I'd like you to think about the impact of an additional 4 months of construction versus a couple of hours each day. And in the later evening hours when things are quieting down and crews have dwindled off, my experience is that those are not very impactful hours. And so I'd suggest you really consider that carefully before you really ask this applicant to incorporate that into their conditions. Thank you.
Board Member Malone Pritchard.
I'd like to disclose that I also met with the applicant at my office, just for an update, since we haven't seen this in a very long time. So I will focus my comments on what is within our purview: lighting, noise, landscape and trash enclosures, exterior materials and finishes. So on the topic of lighting, I did review the lighting design, and I think that it is perfectly acceptable. Sound, just a couple of questions. On sheet G05, there's a notation of an acoustic wall, which I didn't see elsewhere on the plans. I was curious what that was. And feel free to come to the podium and talk about that. Maybe I'll continue with my questions as you look that up. I looked at the HVAC. You'd have to come to the microphone.
So that wall is an option. It's a CMU wall along the open space there. So we can classify that as required open space. So it's an option. It's an alternate.
So that's something that would be installed if the tests after construction require it. Got it. Thank you. Looked at the HVAC systems you're using. Those are indeed quiet systems. I'm not too concerned about those. Onto materials. I'm appreciating what you did. Changing the wood siding down at the pedestrian level really warms it up. I like what you've done with the scoring and reveal patterns. I did have a question on how the wall finishes come and meet the ground. I didn't see any detailing on that, but you have in some cases wood at the bottom of the building. So what was your intention there? Do we see a base? Does the wood come all the way down?
Yeah, we'll have a concrete curb to hold the wood above the finishes or the grading, the earth at the bottom of the building. So it'll be a continuous curb, concrete.
Yeah, you may as well stay. Sorry. I see aluminum windows on our board here, but I did see on sheet A.50 there was a vinyl window called out. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be in the rear of the property, the rear-facing facades in the back.
In the cement plaster walls?
Right, correct.
Okay. And then in the landscape plans, there's a detail for a trash enclosure, but I saw elsewhere it says that all the trash enclosures are within the building. Can you clarify?
We have 2 trash rooms within the building. One where the larger open-air garage is, behind the Vista space, where all the trash chutes deposit the recycling, green, and regular trash. Then those bins are rolled out to the enclosures along the 24-foot easement where the trucks will pick them up. We also have a retail trash room underneath a 3-story building for that little cafe up front So they bring in their trash there, hold it there till pickup day, and they move the bins out to another trash enclosure. So we have 2 trash enclosures along that 24-foot easement.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then another landscape question. In the conditions of approval, there's an electrical comment regarding trees in conflict with conduits near the transformer. Have you had a chance to review that? And
So they're not in conflict anymore, so it's been resolved.
thanks. A lot of times we see older conditions here. Then a question for staff. I saw that signage is a separate application. Is the address number also separate, or is that included in this?
I think that would come back separate. I haven't done any analysis on that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, for the record, I like the way it's mounted there on the canopy. And my only other comment is on the finishes on the cement plaster color. I'm a little concerned that the lighter color, the lacy pearl, may be too bright when it's out in the sun. So I'd like to take a look at that again.
Perfect. Board Member Liu, you have a soft 5 minutes.
Great. So thank you. So I just want to say, just in general, I can support the project. I think the, as I mentioned in the first hearing, the decision to separate the building into 2 different masses is really very important, and I think that's a very, very smart decision. I did have a couple just detailed questions. So in pushing the building back to meet the Grand Boulevard, sidewalks, I think you're going to be exposing some of the property line wall of the Wells Fargo Bank, and so I was wondering what sort of provisions have been made for that exposed party line wall. And also, in a related matter, I think you're showing all the utilities in that side yard next to the Wells Fargo Bank, and I was wondering what provisions were made to screen those from El Camino. Because I didn't see any details for like gates or anything at that location.
Correct. There are no details. We have not considered this in depth yet. So excellent comments, both valid. As mentioned, we have made overture to Wells Fargo about extending the sidewalk extension, widening in front of their property. So the part of their sidewall that we expose, we will talk with them as well about whether there can be some treatment of it that's acceptable to them that can be visually helpful. I'm sure we'll be in conversation with staff about that. And likewise, we have spoken with Fire and Public Works about the utilities on that side yard, but we haven't spoken with them about screening yet, more about schematic designs. So we will follow up on that comment as well.
Okay. And in a related, sort of similar question is on the other side of your other property line condition with the Bank of America. Yes. I think the plans are showing like a very low CMU wall, maybe like 42-inch wall. And it seemed like there was a grade change there, and then there are also very large existing raised planters, maybe like 4-foot high planters with like elm trees or something in there. And I was wondering how that all is being tied together. Like I couldn't picture it from looking at the plans and looking at the site. Sure. I didn't really quite grasp how that was all
There's
connecting.
A slight grade change there. I'm not sure it's even 18 inches. It's less than that. So it's insignificant. The large existing trees in the concrete planters are primarily on the right. Bank of America property, the 2,600 property. So we obviously have not assumed removal of those in our plan. Others may be more familiar with the 42-inch CMU wall that may be indicated there. I don't know the answer to that.
I'll just say the wall screens our property from cars and headlights that might come through, and there are holes in that masonry wall. It's actually 4-inch high concrete block, so it's a very linear brick-like element, which we think will be attractive, and the wall actually helps us to maintain the existing grades on both sides with the least amount of disruption.
Okay, and then I was just thinking is how that, if the existing, the neighbor's big raised planters, it's just, if those are right on the property line, how that all ties together. Like it's just sort of, you can't really tell at the scale of plans, but
yeah,
I just want to make sure that it.
Okay. Well, thank you. We'll make sure that we study it in detail, and I'll just say that our intent is to preserve their planting on their side without any disruption and their walls without changing them.
I have some more questions for you, Gary. So you mentioned the redwood trees, like new redwood trees in the back.
Yes.
And I just have a comment. I'm not opposed to them, but the redwood trees drop seeds in the fall, and when, like with the first fall rains, it leaves stains on the cars. And I know because my neighbors have 3 redwood trees, and you can't just like go to the car wash and they come off. You actually have to like get out a scouring pad and like scrub them off. So just be careful with them. And it's just that one month of the year, like November, December.
Okay.
But it's
yeah. Good comment. Okay. I just want to say again that a lot of this came out of some very detailed conversations with the city arborist.
I'm sure.
And we did actually talk about that, and I think we're weighing a lot of other aspects of tying in with other redwood trees in the neighborhood, and I'm perfectly willing to go back and look at that in more detail. I think maybe it's a good idea to bring that comment forward as we go into the construction drawings.
Okay. Now I know Dave Doctor is very particular about trees, and I don't want to contradict. He knows far more about them than I do, so I don't want to go back and forth about that too much. And then on the landscape, on the you're showing 2 dumpster locations, and then one was right by the garage entrance, and I was wondering if that had been reviewed for sightline issues, like for people exiting the garage. As you're coming out of the garage, you want to sort of see if the alley is clear, and then you've got this big dumpster right there at the edge of the driveway.
From the point where cars would stack before they turn out of the parking garage onto the alley, the trash enclosure is set back about 12 feet or so.
Okay,
I think there should be quite a lot of room for the front of the car and for the driver to see both ways.
Okay, and then also for just in terms of the pathways, there's the Vista office tenant, right? And then presumably they have parking. It looks like there's a door to the, directly from the garage into Vista. But then the other surface parking lots, you have to go all the way around the building, is that my understanding, to the commercial space? Like, I know that like the residents can go through the courtyard, right? Because it's fenced and stuff. But I mean, are you saying that like a visitor to Vista would have to walk all the way around to the Bank of America side?
I believe Vista visitors also access through the courtyard, right? But if there's access to the cafe, then those people would go around to the
cafe people have to walk around, but
yeah. But Vista residents and housing residents go through the courtyard.
Okay, good. That sounds better. It seems like too far if they couldn't go through the courtyard.
Yeah, that's only for the general public to go around.
Got it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You have many more questions?
That's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, I'd like to start by, first of all, thanking the applicant for taking our comments and coming back. I have a couple of questions for staff. Has the city schools, Safe Routes to Schools committee reviewed this project and the route to Escondido at all?
Thank you, Aaron Acton, Assistant Planning Director. Our in-house transportation staff, as well as our transportation consultants, took a look at this. The Safe Routes to School actually does go along El Camino, so that is consistent with it. So our transportation division, the one who did the review.
Yeah, actually, as an elementary school kid, I didn't take safe routes to school. I cut through everybody's backyard, actually. And so the question I have is, and I raised this question before when we looked at the for the market rate housing, the connectivity from the market rate housing to El Camino Real and how they got through. And there are some routes that are supposed to be through, straight through to El Camino Real. I think it's equally as important that we look at how the low-income development, how elementary school kids are going to get to the Escondido school, and generally they're going to want to cut through the market rate housing development, and so we want to make that as accommodating as possible. The city or the city council has mandated that we reinforce our streets here, our street grid, and we have the streets that come through from California Avenue, all of the university named schools, but now we have the horizontal streets that cut through, and that they in some way should be connected up to walking paths, since you have sidewalks to encourage elementary school kids that are actually living in that development to then be able to migrate through that neighborhood. And I think that by doing that, what we avoid is people cutting through the driveway access and using that as their sidewalk. They still will, but we can actually make it more accommodating for school-age kids and their parents to cut through that housing development. And Stanford, you have the jurisdiction on that, and so make it so. Regarding parking, the only jurisdiction we have on parking is the surface parking here. And in terms of some of the city standards, they do allow for parking reductions based on low-income housing, and it's consistent with that. And in addition to that, parking reductions because of its proximity to public transit, and that's also particularly important. We want to get people out of their cars and use public transit, and the eco passes will assist significantly. People like taking public transit if it's being subsidized and paid for by other people. However, the cars might be somewhat problematic. And so one thing that I would ask that they look at is that allow for nighttime parking in the bank parking lots. Banks close relatively early. They close at 5, 6 o'clock at night. They open late in the morning, usually after 9. And I know under California state law, any parking lot is fair game when a business is closed, unless it is specifically chained or gated and not allowing people to park there. So maybe there is some sort of arrangement that could be worked out between Stanford and Wells Fargo, or Stanford and Bank of America, with regard to overflow parking at night for people that have cars. In addition to that, we also have on-street parking. And then there are several city lots that are available along California Avenue, and public streets that could be underutilized. So I think that we have plenty of parking because it's an urban area. So I don't think that that's problematic. And those are my comments for the time being. And we'll do a second round here. Board Member Guyer.
Okay, starting to focus on the changes. I like the project as far as the appearance of it, the use of the various materials, the change from concrete to wood on the ground floor. I think is a big plus. I could accept the project the way it stands at the moment.
Thank you. Vice Chair Pop?
I don't have any additional comments.
Okay. Board Member Malone Pritchard?
I'm very much in support of the project as it is presented, and I just want to point out, although it's not among the things we're allowed to talk about, the width of the sidewalk and what they've done with the setting the building back is absolutely matching up with what we've been asking for all of our zoning changes. So I appreciate that. They've done it on their own.
Thank you. Board Member Liu?
So I just want to follow up on the on some of the other items on our purview, which is the so like the materials. I think the materials look good. I do share Board Member Pritchard's comment about the white. I'm a little worried that that might be too bright. Again, on the noise, I don't really have any concerns about the noise on this. I did have a question about mechanical units for the apartments. Is there any like wall-mounted things on some of our other condos? Everything's on the roof. Great. And then on the lighting, everything looks fine. It looks like Stanford's typical standards, which are fine. And then I think all of the trash and landscaping stuff is looking good. So I think that's all that I have.
Okay. I just have a couple of more comments here. One is I think that I agree with Vice Chair Pop that the stucco building is a little austere. I think that you've taken a little too far, and I agree with him. I think that those recesses that you have that were you originally had these balcony recesses, and maybe if we could bring back some wood material there, it might work. But I think that it's gone a little too far in terms of simplifying the palette here. But otherwise, I think that they're very handsome buildings. I think they're very well conceived. They're very well laid out. The material palette that you've selected is handsome. I really like the way it looks along El Camino Real. And it's really only in the back that I have a problem with the simplification of the materials. I don't mind the glass bridges. I think that the glass bridges actually add a level of complexity without making it terribly fussy or introducing another color to the palette. I think it actually plays off of some of the existing materials that you have there. And I think it's going to be a very successful project, and so I will support the project. I do have one last question. When you, Ms. Tan, when you'd mentioned that Vista was going to be taking ground floor office space, they're going to be taking, there's going to be a cafe, and then there's going to be a housing office and center for the residents, and then there was going to be an office for Vista. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, great. Okay, otherwise, I think it's a terrific project, and I'm in support of it. Do I have a motion here? Nobody wants to approve the project.
I move that we recommend approval of this project in accordance with the findings and conditions of approval, with the one revision that the light color of the cement plaster, the Benjamin Moore Lacy Pearl, come back to subcommittee for review.
Okay. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Board Member Guyer, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I think I've already said it. I think they've done everything we've asked them to do, and it's a very well-designed project.
Do you wish to speak to your second?
No, I'm fine.
Any other discussion?
Would you entertain a friendly amendment?
Sure, we'll entertain a friendly amendment.
That the provision for addressing, how do I say this? That some provision for addressing the property line wall, the neighbor's property line wall, come back to staff, and that some sort of screening gate or fence be reviewed by staff for the utilities on the side yard.
I would accept that.
I'll accept that too.
Vice Chair Pop?
I'd like to make a suggestion for a friendly amendment as well, that at such time when they come back to the subcommittee for review of the stucco color, that they have the opportunity to suggest revisions to the exterior fenestration and skin. I'm sorry, not fenestration, but skin materials. We talked a little bit about the pendulum maybe swinging a little too far. Both Chair Lippert and I felt that there was an opportunity for them to bring a little more richness back to the palette. And if they chose to do that, I would be in favor of that, but I wouldn't hold up their project relative to that.
I would accept that as you stated it, that it would be their option, not a requirement that they change it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great. And I don't have a friendly amendment. I just have a comment that I'd like to make. I think that it's important that the Safe Sidewalks to Schools committee have a look at the project and comment to staff, and that Stanford look at connectivity between this project, the low-income housing, and the market rate housing, and how we make connections between the two, and that they be worked out with the two landscape architects. Particularly, I'm not in support of having a sidewalk on the driveway easement, because I think it encourages school-age children to actually walk or bicycle along that route when cars are going to be coming in and out. But if we can accommodate them by bringing them into the market rate development and have them walk along the sidewalks there and then down some of the streets there, I think it will alleviate that problem. Otherwise, it's El Camino Real that they really have to walk down. And I know bicycling along along El Camino Real is not a safe route for school-age children. So with that, we will vote on the motion and the amendments all together. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you very much for your time this morning, and we will move on now to board member reports and business. And I have asked Vice Chair Pop to report to the Planning and Transportation Commission next Wednesday regarding our comments regarding sidewalk widths, and then to report back to us on whatever action the Planning and Transportation Commission will be taking. Are they still going to be meeting then?
Yes, April 9th is the Planning and Transportation Commission meeting on the sidewalk ordinance. And we did conduct a meeting on April 1st, on Tuesday, with the property owners at an off-site location. We did get some feedback from them, so
great.
Be conveying that verbally to the commission.
And then I have one other comment here. Under subcommittee, we still don't have the correct terms of people. We still have single people serving. So I just want to say here that you have it correct for Vice Chair Pop, Board Member Liu. Board Member Guyer will start on not on April 17th, but after April 17th. And his term will run through the term. And then Board Member Malone Pritchard would be starting after June 19th. And her term would run through. And then I would succeed Board Member Guyer. And then we would bring Board Member Pop back on the schedule again. Vice Chair Pop. Or Chair Pop at that time.
Whatever I am.
Whatever you are. Okay. Any other reports from officials here? Amy, do you have anything you want to add?
No, thanks. We'll probably touch base with you one more time on this, just to confirm
do you understand,
that.
do you understand what I'm saying here? Otherwise, we have just one member of the subcommittee, and we can't have that.
We have two members, yes. So
Right.
We'll just confirm exactly what you're saying.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have one item on the subcommittee, and with that, we are adjourned. Thank Thank you.